All right, let's pull back the curtain on the secret life of a Lightning Web component. We're going to follow its entire journey, from the very second it's created to the moment it vanishes from a page. And we'll do it by digging into these things called lifecycle hooks.
So, have you ever really thought about it? How does a component actually live on a web page? It doesn't just poof appear, right? It's born, it gets plugged into the page, it shows up on screen, it changes when things happen, and then it's gone. That whole process, that's its journey. And lucky for us, we have special tools to jump in at every single one of those stages.
And those tools? Yep, they're called lifecycle hooks. Just think of them as automatic alerts from the LWC framework. It's like the component is sending up a flare at these really key moments in its life, saying, hey, I'm being created now, or hey, I'm about to be removed. And these are our chances, our entry points to run our own code, fetching data, cleaning up a mess at exactly the right moment. Getting a handle on these is, seriously, the key to building components that are solid and fast.
So every single component follows this exact same path, no exceptions. First, it's created in memory. Then it gets inserted into the page's structure, what we call the DOM. After that, it gets painted on the screen for everyone to see. And finally, when it's not needed anymore, it gets removed. Simple, right? Let's break down each of these 4 stages.
Okay, let's jump right in at the beginning, the component's birth. This is all about how it goes from just being code in your editor to a real live element that's actually part of the web page.
And the very first sign of life? That's the constructor. This is the first hook that ever gets called. The second that a component instance is created in memory, and before it has any idea what page it's going to live on, the constructor fires.
Now, the constructor has some really strict rules you got to follow. It's the perfect spot to set up some initial variables, its internal state. And listen, this is super important. It is way too early to do anything else. You might be asking why. Well, it's because at this point, the component is just an idea floating around in memory. It hasn't been put on the page yet. There's literally no HTML to see or interact with.
All right, next up, the main event. The component makes its grand entrance. The moment it's officially plugged into the DOM, bam, the connectedCallback hook fires. This is a huge milestone for our little component.
connectedCallback. This is where the action really starts. Now that our component is live and on the page, this is your green light. This is the place to go fetch data from the server, start listening for mouse clicks or keyboard presses, or do any kind of setup that actually needs to mess with the component's own HTML.
So here's a good way to think about it. The constructor, that's like the architect drafting blueprints in an office. It's all theoretical. But connectedCallback, that's when you're on the actual construction site. The foundation has been poured, and now you can start putting up walls and hooking up the electricity. One happens in total isolation, the other happens when the component actually joins the real world. Okay, so our component is born. It's connected. It's officially part of the page. Now it has to, live. And living means showing up on the screen and reacting when things change. Let's dive into how it handles this part of its life. As soon as the component's HTML is actually painted on the screen, the user can see it, the renderedCallback hook gets called. But here's the catch. This isn't a one-and-done deal. Oh no, this hook runs every single time the component re-renders because some data changed. So this hook is your go-to tool when you absolutely have to interact with the DOM after it's been drawn. Maybe you need to measure an element's size or fire up some third-party library that needs to see the HTML. But the big thing to remember, the absolute key, is how often it runs. It can run a lot, so whatever code you stick in here had better be fast and efficient.
And that leads us straight to a giant flashing warning sign. Think about it. If you change a component state inside renderedCallback, what's going to happen? Well, the component's going to re-render. And what happens right after it re-renders? renderedCallback runs again. You see the problem? You can so easily create an infinite loop that'll just crash the browser. So you have to be so careful about changing state inside this hook.
But life isn't always perfect. What happens when things go wrong, when an error pops up? Well, for that, we have the errorCallback. Think of this hook as a safety net. It's specifically designed to catch errors, but not just any errors. It catches errors that happen in any of the component's children. And this is just incredibly powerful. Seriously, without it, one little error in a small child component could crash your whole app. But with this, the parent component can catch that error, log what happened, and maybe show the user a nice, friendly message instead of a broken page. It makes your whole application way more robust and resilient. Well, all good things must come to an end, right? Eventually, our component's time on the page is over, and it's going to be removed. This final stage is all about a graceful exit. We want it to clean up after itself and not leave a mess.
So, right before a component is ripped out of the DOM and destroyed for good, one last hook is called disconnectedCallback. This is its final chance to say goodbye and tidy everything up. And the number one job here, without a doubt, is preventing memory leaks. Think about it. If you set up a custom event listener, or maybe a timer back in connectedCallback, this is the place you have to get rid of it. If you forget, that stuff can just keep running in the background, eating up memory, even long after the component is totally gone. Not good.
Okay, let's just do a super quick summary to lock this in. Constructor, that's for setting up state before the component is even on the page. ConnectedCallback, that's your go-to for fetching data and setting up listeners when it's live. RenderedCallback for working with the DOM, but remember, be careful. And finally, disconnectedCallback. This is all about cleanup to prevent memory leaks and keep your app running smoothly.
And really, that's what this all boils down to. These hooks aren't just some random functions you have to learn. They're the actual control levers for a component's entire life. When you understand them, you get precise control over how your component behaves, how fast it runs, and how reliable it is. So let's walk that journey one last time. Its birth happens in the constructor. It gets connected to the world in connectedCallback. Its life on the page with all the re-renders is handled by renderedCallback. And its graceful exit is managed by disconnectedCallback. It's a simple, predictable story every single time.
So we figured out how a component can manage its own life perfectly, from beginning to end. That's great. But right now, it's kind of living in a bubble. It's all by itself. So the next big question we have to ask is, how does it talk to everything else? How does it communicate with its parent or its children or the rest of the application? Well, that's a story for another time.